What's up, guys? I want to briefly show you how to do some tiling textures in Photoshop. Uh, really useful to know how to do, especially if you're doing a lot of environmental stuff, props, or just anything where you need a tile texture like a floor, wall, that kind of thing. It's just really handy to know. So going into Photoshop, open up whatever size you want your document to be. In this case, I'm doing a 512 by 512. Any matching dimension usually works. 256 by 512, 512 by 512. Usually do square textures for this, but you can really do it with any size or shape. So once we have that opened up, I'm going to go ahead and let's just do like a wooden floor, right? We'll do something simple as for sake of demonstration. I'm not going to go through the entire texturing process. We'll save that for another video. But in this case, let's do something basic. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this all on one layer for now. The reason for that is doing this on more than one layer can be a little tiring. There's ways around it that I'll bring up later that can significantly speed it up, make it a lot easier to do. But in this case, let's just keep it to one layer. And actually, I might do stones instead. We could keep it. We could keep it wood. I like wood. I like wood. So in this case, I'm just going to start plotting out, right, where I want my panes to be. And let's make sure that it has to cross over for the tiling part, right? So let's just say we got this one that's going to go over there. And so we'll do... right. So we're chopping the wood up. And I'm just going to keep it really basic right now. Just add some slight shadows and highlights. Just enough that we could see what's going on. And then some highlights. It's a little too crazy. All right, that'll do. This way we can at least see what this is going to look like. So already we're having trouble because it's like, oh, that needs to be over there. How is it going to tile properly? If you put this on a plane right now, it would probably be all choppy. So what you want to do at this point, I'm going to get rid of the second layer. The way, and pretty much the main workflow is to go into filter, other, and then offset. And generally you could put in any numbers, but it's generally easiest to put in half of what you did. If it's important to you that you return to where you first painted it, there's an easy way to remember. Otherwise it might just keep changing. If you do like random numbers, you won't ever see it lined up like this exactly on your canvas, which might not be very important, but if you're gonna have multiple layers, it's easier to remember, a set number. So in this case, I'll just do 256 by 256, and then boom, it offset it. So now we can see that things don't quite line up. This is missing the rest of it. These parts, just come to a sudden end because we didn't paint that. But now that we offset it, we can go ahead and we could fill in the rest of that, right? This one's like, okay, well, we want that to come all the way across. Let me get my dark there. Boom. This one didn't even have another side to it. And so we can take our time and plot out matching brush strokes now, so it doesn't seem obvious where there's a break in the coloring, or an actual texture seam visible. I'm not gonna go too crazy. Like I said, the point of this is to just show you the tiling workflow. And since we used a filter for offset, there's a hotkey already right up top. You can see Alt Control F. We could press that again and it'll bring us back to our original setup. And so now I could double check myself And I actually do like putting in unconventional values for it just to see it in a different light. So now I'm going to put in some darker lines, right? Oops. I'm keeping it pretty sterile right now, I know. And then we could do Alt Control F again. Boom, pop back over here. Okay, make it match. And so I'm actually going to do it as 128 instead. So I'm going to go back, offset. I'm going to do 128 by 128. And now if I want to get this back to where it was, I can just do minus 128 by 128, right? So now we could fix all that. We could start putting in more detail where it makes sense. Right, so we might, for example, let's put in some extra detail that kind of flows off the page a little in a way that's harder to maintain by doing it flat here, right? It's like, okay, well, where's that line up? You could try to guess, but it might be a problem. And so we're just kind of saying, okay, maybe it comes out here. You know, this piece is wood. So now I'll press it again, and boom, we could see all the areas that need fixing. And so that's pretty much the whole process, is you're going to go back and forth, making it seamless, making your brush strokes actually make sense across the document. And you could keep hitting that offset button and correcting everywhere you see there's problems, right? And then propel your texture a little bit further each time. Generally, it's enough to just do the block out with the offset command, and then once it all lines up, I would, for the most part, just paint the whole thing flat and then do the offset at the end and correct it. So you don't have to jump around like this. It might be more fun to do that or whatnot. I'd actually probably recommend just painting it all and then doing some offsets. That way you could just focus on getting all your shapes and colors in there instead of just correcting it, because you're just going to make more paint strokes anyway, right? So you have options, whatever feels good to you while you're doing it. You know, whatever gives you energy, like, okay, I want to see it again. Make sure it's tiled. And then you could bring it in to, you know, 3D Max or Maya or whatever your 3D program of choice is, if you're using Blender or Modo. And check it out, you know, apply it to a plane, tile it a few times, stretch those UVs out. And so this is one way of doing it. This is the way I've seen and used the most. Now, you're probably thinking, well, I want to use multiple layers, or wow, this is kind of sucks, right? Yeah, but it's the main way. But if you want to use multiple layers, the first and most obvious way is, you know, you could have another layer. Say you want all your highlights to be on this layer, and you'd rather work in multiple layers because that's what you're more comfortable with. So you could put your highlights on this layer, right? And now though, when you offset, it's offsetting it differently. So you could click on both, you know, you have that shortcut, that offset shortcut, but when you start having more and more layers, it's not too bad with only two, but if you're building up like 4 or 5 layers at a time, maybe it's time for another solution. And so you could, if you're good with actions, you could write yourself an action that does all that, but you might be deleting or combining layers, so it could get kind of annoying. So in this regard, if you feel like you need more than one layer, I definitely would recommend to look in to scripts and stuff online. For example, I'm going to link this below, but you can go to something like, let's see here, Polycounts. They have a wiki, Photoshop tools on Polycount, and they'll have a bunch of different, I'll bring it over here, a bunch of different links to filters, scripts, and actions. The ones I recommend looking at are Layer Cake, and then the SDV offset and tile. And so what those are going to do is one of them will tile it automatically for you. So you could see what this looks like when you, for example, so if I make my canvas a lot bigger, right? So let's do 200%. It will do this automatically. And then, oh, not even 200%. Let's, so 300. And it'll automatically tile it for you. So now, like, if you want to see how it actually looks, it'll be one button and it'll go ahead and do this for you. And so I'm sure you could see the value in that as well. So now we can say, how is this actually going to look on a floor? And instead of having to go into your 3D program and see the tile, you know, you could have it up on the other screen. Sometimes it's useful to do that because then when you hit save, you just see it update. But if you don't want to have another program open, it's nice to see how it tiles. And so those actions and those scripts available will help you do that. Layer Cake is more fully functional. It has a button to automatically update it, to do all your layer offsets at once, to see it as a tile like this. And the other one is a little more lightweight of an action in Photoshop. I think it's a script that you could use as an action, which you would do with File, Script, and then Browse after you download it. And then it will do all the offsetting for you, you know, or let you see it tiled. So they're both very useful. But in general, I hope this shines some light on how you might do tile textures, you know, for environments or whatever you're doing within Photoshop. And then, so if we want to bring this back down, just for those curious, I can control click my thumbnail of the original one and then go image crop, and we're back to our original, and we can keep painting. So there we go.